Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today and for each of your efforts to combat the plastic pollution crisis we are seeing that's entering our waters. I'm Kim LaWand Martin. I'm the Associate Director of the Los Angeles Waterkeeper, an environmental advocacy organization fighting for swimmable, fishable, and drinkable water. We hope you've all had a chance to watch The Story of Plastic, the groundbreaking expose that takes a sweeping look at the man-made crisis of plastic pollution and the devastating worldwide effect it has on the health of our planet and the life that depends upon it. Today, we're so excited to bring you an excellent group of panelists to share the latest updates in the field battling plastic pollution through awareness, policymaking, and creating opportunities for a plastic-free lifestyle to be accessible for everyday consumers. Please welcome our panelists, Deanna Cohen, a co-executive director on the film and CEO and co-founder of the Plastic Pollution Coalition, Miho Lagar, the Plastic Pollution Policy Coordinator for Surfrider Foundation's Plastic Pollution Initiative, Craig Cadwallader, our local policy expert with Surfrider South Bay, and Stephanie Cochran, the founder of The Wasteless Shop. We'll be leaving time for questions from the audience at the end, so please share your questions via comments on the live stream, and we'll be sure to get to those. I'd first like to share a little bit about Los Angeles Waterkeeper and about our local plastic pollution crisis. Since 1993, Los Angeles Waterkeeper has served as LA's water watchdog. We safeguard our inland and coastal waters using the law, science, and community action. Through our interconnected programs, we seek to eliminate pollution of our local waterways and restore our inland waterways and marine environment back to health. We also work to ensure a local, equitable, and climate-friendly water supply for the Los Angeles region. As you probably already know and hopefully learned more about by watching the documentary, The Story of Plastic, pollution is the most visible source of pollution impacting our communities. I want to share just a few quotes from the film that were so impactful to me. Tina from Indonesia Plastic Bag Diet Movement quoted, "If industries are making a product that is able to be recycled not only in the country where it's produced, but in the country where it ends up, then they shouldn't be producing that product." Really thoughtful. And then Von Hernandez from Break Free from Plastic, "We cannot be forever supporting the bottom line of companies producing this plastic. That has to stop now. They have to be given the bill." Again, really provocative. So lots and lots more quotes. One of them that I'll leave you with is, we cannot recycle or clean up our way out of this problem. We need to reduce and reuse. And I love this quote because I've always said the 3 R's are genius in their simplicity. They're intentional in their order of reduce, reuse, and then recycle. So you can make a difference. This is the good news. Not just by cleaning it up, which we will offer, lots of opportunities to do, but even more importantly, by eliminating single-use plastics in the first place, by choosing reusable and shopping responsibly, and then by holding the producers of the plastic waste accountable. As we'll see today, together, we can all make a big impact. One way you can make an impact locally is by joining us every Saturday in July for a Plastic-Free July Cleanup Challenge to raise the consciousness about the plastic pollution crisis. As was aptly said in the film, while cleanups may not be a way to completely remedy the plastic pollution problem, they are a means to educate the public about how massive the problem is. So you can learn more and register for these events by visiting lawaterkeeper.org and then click Plastic Free July. And we'll put the link in the chat as well. And now let's turn it over to our panelists. I'd first like to introduce you to Deanna Cohen. Deanna, thank you for being here and for your role in bringing this critical expose to life. My first question for you is, what did you hope to achieve in making The Story of Plastic? And what's the biggest thing you want people to take away from this fabulous film?
Well, just so you know, we were, as Plastic Pollution Coalition, we came in originally just as associate producers to help support what was already happening. It was coming from Steve Wilson and Dea Schlossberg, the director, and the folks at The Story of Stuff. So it was really focused around that idea of the story of stuff and the story of plastic. Obviously, we were supportive of the idea because we feel like it's really important to tell the real story and the broader, more comprehensive story. Plastic and plastic pollution is not just a question of plastic washing up in the beach or plastic entangling wildlife and sea life or plastic used in the fishing industry. It's also, as we follow it upstream, a question of the way that we use plastic to package most of our food and beverages in, the impact of that on human health, again, on animal health and the environment, and then, of course, the way that plastic impacts everyone on the planet, from extraction and, the wellhead through manufacturing, production, use, and then end-of-life incineration, waste management. So we felt it was a really important story to tell, and we just wanted to be supportive of it. And I think that the film is very, very effective in terms of giving people a full bird's eye view that is both a macro view and a micro view at the same time, coming into personal stories of people who are directly on the front line, impacted by the plastic industry and by our use of plastic and single-use plastics.
Well, wonderful. We're so glad, that you did get involved. And, I've seen the film before, but I went back this week and watched it again, and it never ceases to really just open my eyes as to how massive the problem is, and also just how its impacts are, in areas and, happening in certain regional areas and with communities that we may not even be aware of. So that leads to my next question, which is, we would love if you could speak to what seemed to be one of the big takeaways of the film, the nexus between big oil and plastics, and the resulting environmental injustice, both from the pollution made from, making the plastics, and then the impacts of the waste shipped to other countries.
Yeah, I think that, people who are new to this issue may not actually realize that plastic is made primarily from oil and byproducts of processing petroleum. We now also call fracking and ethylene cracking and those things, we call plastic fracked plastic, because a lot of the energy and that material is being used to make single-use plastics and to make plastics. So plastics are primarily made from oil. And then we add other chemicals to this carbon source to plasticize it, to make it supple, rigid, malleable, transparent, translucent. Those chemicals include groups called phthalates and also bisphenols. You may have heard, oh, this is, made with BPA, or this is BPA free, as if that's potentially better. But we also now know that the substitutes for BPA are equally bad, if not worse, to BPA. And all of these different chemicals, the phthalates and the bisphenols, are endocrine disruptors, so they affect our health. Mm-hmm. So when you look at people around the world or across the United States who live near any of the processing of this, and for me, it was really eye-opening. I had an opportunity a few years ago to visit the Gulf Coast in Texas, in Houston. It's 66 miles of petrochemical plastic facilities and plants. And talk with and meet other activists and the community who live across the street, whose families and children play at the playgrounds and the community centers that have been provided to them, with a thanks to, BP or ExxonMobil as a gift to the community. And it sounds really nice, but the health issues and the impact that those local communities have to deal with on a regular basis, from polluted air to polluted water to issues with sexual function and fertility, to cancers and asthma, it's frankly is like unbelievably upsetting. And there is no way. I know people say stuff like that all the time, but there really is no way. I mean, it actually makes me emotional when I remember it. And even when you see it in a film, what you don't see is you don't experience the smell. And the smell of those facilities. And this is real. And this is disproportionately impacts our use and our dependence on this material, particularly using it for like these silly kind of single-use throwaway items, and to package all of our food and beverages in, and our beauty products and our health products. This is disproportionately impacting communities of color, Black and brown communities, indigenous communities, fence line, frontline communities, oftentimes lower income communities. And it's frankly not fair in any way, but it's also impacting everybody else. And we don't realize it yet. People do not realize this yet. So all of this is more than, just cleaning it up. Just cleaning it up is not going to solve this. We need to work on some pretty significant systems changes, and it's happening around us, which is super exciting.
Well, that's just a perfect segue to the next question. And to lead into that, to my next question, I want to read another quote that really, really hit me from the film as well. Someone had said that costs that were externalized in the past need to be internalized. We need to give back those costs and have them incorporate them into the bottom line. Then they will have the incentive to reduce the waste, to reduce those costs, and to be more environmentally friendly. And of course, legislation is very helpful to effectuate this. Right. So my next question for you has to do with producer responsibility. What is it? Why is it important? And then my follow-up question will have to do, with federal legislation about this. But let's start with producer responsibility and why it's so important, Deanna.
Sure. So for a long time, people have been saying EPR, which is extended producer responsibility, but now we've all just decided to call it producer responsibility, because that's really what it is. So what does it mean when you are a big corporation and you manufacture products or you make products which are packaged in all of the single-use plastic and plastic containers? What has unfortunately happened is that the costs and the impact to our health, to animal health, to the health of the environment, our water, our air, our landscape, our, everything around us has been externalized, which means it's been pushed onto the public. It's been pushed onto us. And, that is vastly unfair. And it's also really, it's a social justice and an environmental justice issue. And so when you really look at that, what needs to happen, and we're moving this in this direction, is that these companies and corporations must take 100% responsibility for the choices that they make, the packaging choices, the delivery choices that they make, and taking 100% responsibility for that, they must come up with systems to recollect it, to take it back, to use reusable materials, to use non-toxic materials, to use materials that can be sterilized and refilled at maybe at a local level, and create more of a loop system, which is not dependent on using this enormous amount of plastic and continuing to ramp up production, et cetera, of the plastic. So that's really what producer responsibility means. It means that the companies and the corporations and the businesses that sell you products take responsibility for their products and their packaging for the complete life cycle of that product and the end of life of that product.
I love that so much. As you know, I'm an environmental lawyer, and that's how I made my way to Los Angeles Waterkeeper. And some of our conversations have been around this producer responsibility. And I'm not sure if people are aware, but so much of the plastic pollution that we see out there, the onus falls upon cities and counties to then spend our tax dollars, cleaning, doing their best to clean this problem up and keep it out of waterways and the ocean. Mm-hmm. And then, further, the burden, this like you as citizens, you need to make sure to get out there and clean it up. But we as citizens, as we saw in the documentary, there's just no amount of cleanups that could possibly get all of this plastic out of our environment, not just our waterways, but all the environment. So I think that's such an important concept and a paradigm shift for people to understand. So thanks for explaining it. Mm-hmm. My last question for you then has to do with, why, we've talked about why we're in this plastic pollution crisis. How can we move forward? And you've talked about this concept of producer responsibility. If you could talk about the Break Free from Plastic Act, the federal legislation that's attempting to incentivize and move us in that direction.
Sure. So it's actually called the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, just to be super clear.
Yeah.
The idea is that we should live in a plastic pollution-free America, and we need to break free from plastic pollution. So really, it's to break free from single-use plastics. And ideally, it's to break free from fossil fuels as well, because these are made from fossil fuels. So that act, which was recently reintroduced, is very comprehensive. It includes looking not just at somewhat broken recycling systems and infrastructure to support that, but it also looks at refill systems, reusable systems, and the infrastructure that would need to be in place to support that as well. And I know Craig Cadwallader is going to speak too, and he can speak to this in a much finer way than I can, but we are very excited about the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. It is monumental in that it is the first of its kind, a very comprehensive bill, and we are excited. And we have, I think at this point, 110 representatives who have signed on and co-sponsors of it. But we need more. I mean, my personal feeling is we need everybody on board with this. And I don't feel that this plastic pollution impacts all of us. And it impacts our children, and it will continue to impact future generations. So this should really be a bipartisan and nonpartisan issue that everybody can get behind, because we all want to live in a world that is free of plastic pollution. So
I love it. It's not just a litter problem or even just an environmental problem. It's a human health problem, and it's certainly, our marine life as well. So thank you. And along those lines, while that is fantastic that the U.S. Is, taking a step hopefully in the right direction, it's also worth noting that many countries are doing the same thing. And indeed, some of the smaller countries and countries that you might not expect to be leaders in this area are. I had the pleasure of being in Rwanda a few years ago, and they are just so progressive in how they are dealing with plastic, and many countries on the continent of Africa are. So it's great to see the U.S. And other countries kind of joining forces. Well, thank you, Deanna. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for explaining all of that. And now we're going to kick it over to Miho, and we're going to learn a little bit more about producer responsibility and what else is happening on the policy front to combat plastic pollution in California, as well as the national level.
Great, thanks, Kim. And thanks everyone for having me. It's an honor to be here with all my fellow speakers. And again, thanks Kim and Kelly and Missy for organizing this. My name is Miho Laguerre, and I'm the Plastic Pollution Policy Coordinator with the Surfrider Foundation. And my slides are coming up right now. I'm really excited to be here, and happy Plastic Free July. So yeah, as Kim mentioned, I'm going to start with California plastics legislation, particularly Surfrider's priority bills, and then move on to federal legislation. So as some of you may recall, last year we had two really big comprehensive bills dealing with plastics. It was SB 54 and AB 1080. But this year we're seeing more discrete bills from last year's kind of comprehensive bill, that there's momentum that was gained. And so there's a lot of elected officials interested in tackling the issue with plastic. So we're seeing these comprehensive bills kind of pulled out into more discrete bills. And so earlier in the legislative session, the circular economy package was introduced by legislators last March. And so out of this whole package, this list is the ones that Surfrider is supporting. And there's a few that are crossed out, and those are inactive because they didn't pass their House of Origin. So I'm going to quickly go through the 4 bills that Surfrider has created campaigns and action alerts for. And then just as a quick primer, where we are in the legislative session is that bills needed to pass their House of Origin in the beginning of June. And because of that deadline passing, some bills are now inactive, some bills might be 2 years, and now the Assembly bills are being heard in the Senate, and then the Senate bills are being considered in the Assembly. So the first bill that we're strongly advocating for is on the next slide. It's AB 881. And this really ties in nicely to Deanna and the story of plastic that was just discussed. So this is that currently export and mixed plastic waste is deemed recycled in California, even though it's landfilled, burned, dumped, or otherwise improperly disposed of. And so, as mentioned before, most of these countries that we export our plastic waste don't have the infrastructure to properly manage this waste. And so this becomes an environmental justice issue. We are exporting our plastic waste, not thinking about it, but in reality, we're doing so much more harm to countries that can't manage their waste. So this bill would have two criteria to make sure that if you're exporting plastic waste, in order for it to be deemed recycled, it would have to meet a certain threshold. And so it's set for the Senate Appropriations Committee for July 15th. And the next slide has the next bill. It's AB 962 by Assemblymember Kumlager, the returnable beverage bottle. So this would create a returnable bottle system in California and preserve bottles so that they can be washed or refilled by beverage producers rather than being crushed for recycling. So this creates a refill system, something that Surfrider has been advocating for, because we know that a returnable bottle operation creates new jobs, reduces waste, and is better for our community and the environment. And reuse systems can create as many as 30 times more jobs than landfills. And this bill is also set for the Senate Appropriations Committee on July 15th. And the next bill I'm going to talk about is SB 343. This is from the Senate side, so Senate Allen. It's a truth in labeling for recyclables. So this will help end consumer confusion about which material is suitable for the blue bin, reduce contamination, lower waste volume, and improve recycling rates. So we're seeing a lot of products with the chasing arrow symbol, a lot of greenwashing, companies trying to get more products sold. And so, they're realizing that consumers really want a more sustainable alternative. And so more often than not, we're seeing these chasing arrow signs, and consumers who are dutifully seeing these signs will put it in their blue bin. And in reality, a lot of these items that have the chasing arrow symbol aren't really being recycled. There's no end market, so it ends up actually just being landfilled. And so this bill wouldn't allow the use of the chasing arrow symbol or any other suggestions that a material is recyclable unless the material is actually recyclable in most California communities and it's routinely sold to manufacturers to make new products. And then the last California bill that I'm going to talk about is AB 1276, and this one expands the plastic straws upon request law to include other single-use food accessories, other food facilities, and third-party delivery platforms, including food that is taken away or being delivered. And so with the pandemic, we have seen an influx in people ordering to go, delivery, and then you're getting these condiment packets, a lot of the bundles with the forks and spoons and knives with like the salt and pepper and napkin that's just in a plastic fold, which we don't need because a lot of times we're eating this at home and we don't even want it, but they don't actually give you even an option to say if you want it or not. And so this bill would have an opt-in component where the customer would have to specifically ask for a specific foodware accessory item. So this one is set for, actually there was a hearing today with the Senate Governance and Finance, and I'm happy to report that it did pass. So all four of these bills are moving along in the legislative process. And then on the next slide, I just really wanted to briefly flag this really exciting ballot initiative that's coming in 2022. It hasn't been officially announced yet, but generally speaking, it has really exciting components, including banning polystyrene statewide, requiring producers to transition to reusable, recyclable, or compostable single-use packaging, and establishes a fee on plastic producers of up to 1 cent per item. And this would generate funds for programs and activities intended to reduce waste, increase recycling, and restore the environment. So this could be one example of holding producers more responsible. So for every item that they sell, then they would be taxed 1 cent that would actually go towards cleaning up of the mess that they're creating. So this ballot initiative, it'll most likely be announced this summer. And so we're looking for endorsements and we're looking for more traction on this. So in particular, we're looking for restaurants and businesses to endorse the ballot initiative. So if you have any restaurants or businesses that you know of that might be interested in this, please reach out to me and I can send you more information. And my email information is at the very end of the slide. So I realize that this is a lot of information. So on the next slide, there is a website that I'll drop in. It's the Surfrider's webpage that has the information about all of the California legislation that we're working on. And so, moving on to the next slide. This is, about the exciting federal legislation that Deanna talked about. The Federal Breakthrough from Plastic Pollution Act, which was reintroduced by Senator Merkley and Representative Lowenthal this March. So I won't go into too much detail because this was already discussed, but just something to really emphasize again is that this is a really unique, comprehensive bill because it addresses plastic pollution across its whole life cycle. So we know that every part of the plastic life cycle harms our community and the environment, from extraction and manufacture to distribution and the point of sale to disposal and recycling. And all these components from the Breakthrough from Plastic Pollution Act is also based on policies that have been proven successful and effective at local and state levels. So we know it works, which is really exciting that these components are in there because it'll kind of scale up into the national level. And so the next slide shows what the Breakthrough from Plastic Pollution Act would accomplish. And so one major theme, as mentioned before, is source reduction. And then the priorities that Surfrider focused on for the introduced bill includes pushing for incentivizing reuse, refill models, strengthening the definition of reusable bag, addressing toxics more broadly, and closing the loophole for plastic waste exports. And so my last slide has the action alert for the Surfrider, what we've been working on. So if you have a moment, we would love for you to sign the action alert and show your representatives that you care. This matter is really important and that they should vote yes for the Breakthrough from Plastic Pollution Act. So thank you so much. And I'll drop in some links with additional information. So there's my email, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Miho. It's so great to see momentum for both the federal and the California legislation focused on real solutions to this plastic pollution crisis, reducing the local demand for single-use plastics alongside putting the responsibility for its impacts on those that produce the waste. While cleanups are important, as we've talked about, we need to turn off the tap of plastic being produced. And I, for one, am really appreciative of the work that you're doing, Surfrider's doing, and Plastic Pollution Coalition, and all the amazing organizations. There's so many fantastic ones. We all work so collaboratively together because that's the only way we're going to make an impact with this problem. So on that note, let's turn it over to Craig, and we're going to hear about what's happening locally. As one of the founders of an environmental education nonprofit called Grades Green, I've had the pleasure of working side by side with Craig for over 10 years to encourage cities to adopt plastic reduction ordinances. Craig is a genuine superhero in the South Bay of Los Angeles in educating our cities and advocating for change. So Craig, join us, please.
Well, thank you very much, Kim. This is quite an honor to be sharing some information with some of my heroes. So you and Deanna and Miho, it's quite an honor to be among this group. And I'll try to roll through overview of some local ordinances and some efforts that are being done. I really come from the position that if they aren't going to do it statewide, nationwide, or countywide, we're going to start from each city. And if we have to do every city in the state, then so be it. An example of that is the California single-use plastic bag ban. We actually had 151 local ordinances that passed their own bans before that gained traction statewide. And right now we have over 140 local foodware ordinances. And all of this is designed, we need to fix it locally. It'd be better to have it nationally and statewide or countywide. But if we can't get that, we'll do it one by one. If we have to do every single city, I'm more than willing to do that. So,
and I'm just going to say, Craig, as we've seen in Los Angeles, it's oftentimes these local governments that are leading the way on the local bans, which then lead to, bigger statewide bans and et cetera. So thank you for telling us all about them and how cities can work together to fight this plastic pollution.
Yes, and Just a brief overview. We've had some very good local electeds who really care about the environment and have implemented some plastic reduction ordinances. And I've been pursuing kind of a mini regional strategy, I call it, with the beach cities. And we have been very fortunate in passing very comprehensive foodware ordinances and smoking bans in Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach, and we've tried to synchronize those ordinances so they all are similar. So if you drive across the street into a different city, you're still under the same basic ordinance. We're also working with the city of El Segundo. And a big thing that we're spending most of our time on is the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles to get comprehensive foodware ordinances. Just recently, the city of LA passed an upon request ordinance for foodware accessories. The county followed that. Theirs isn't quite as strong as the city, but we're still working on that. We hope to change that. We've been working on a county-wide foodware ordinances for well over a decade. And LA County, the greater LA County area has 10 million people, so it's a big ship to steer. And but we're going to keep working on that. We have a coalition called Reusable LA that has a number of NGOs involved, working very hard to get a countywide and city ordinance. Most important, well, very interesting in our area is on Monday night, the Culver City City Council will have the second reading, as they call it, and adoption of a modified foodware ordinance for Culver City. The first one we worked on was in 2017. This one we've been working with city staff since 2019, but it's finally on the last vote on the agenda under the consent calendar. And the big issues with that is the first local ordinance that will ban all disposable foodware at dine-in restaurants. So it requires reusable foodware only. And also an element in that ordinance is to ban the use of single-use plastic water bottles in all city facilities. We hope that'll expand citywide. It also is modeled after the Manhattan Beach ordinance that went through 6 iterations and is quite strong. And just recently, the city of Pasadena has looked at an upon request ordinance, as well as the city of Beverly Hills. And they both have kind of modeled after the county ordinance. And we're hoping to convince them to match to the city of LA ordinance, which is much more effective. So we're working on that. But the big issue is we've been responding to the impacts of the pandemic and COVID-19 restrictions. And that has had a huge impact on restaurants, as we all know. And the responses has been to expand the use of single-use disposable foodware to the point where, for instance, in Manhattan Beach, they had to up their budget for waste removal in downtown areas where the trash cans were overflowing with single-use foodware items. So we know there's a direct impact. We do have local bag bans in Manhattan Beach and Hermosa Beach, and the grocery stores have decided kind of in a misguided way to not allow reusable shopping bags, which is both those cities have ordinances, and they have the grocery stores have been violating the local ordinances. We contacted the mayors of both cities, and now they've gone back to allowing use of reusable shopping bags. The part of the response has been suspending certain ordinances. The city of Pasadena suspended their single-use bag ban that was in place since 2011. The city of El Segundo has an upon request ordinance that they suspended for 60 days, but that's back in effect now. And other cities have chosen just not to enforce the ordinances. So they've been trying to be considerate of restaurants, but we also have been inundated with trash. And there needs to be a better balance. So we're hoping now, as we come out of the pandemic, that we'll be able to solve some of these problems. We've also been working on updates with various cities that have been put on hold because of the pandemic, and we're now coming out of that, and Culver City is an excellent example of that.
I love it. I love it. Oh, I'm sorry. Echo. But I love the open with reuse slogan that a lot of organizations are using and encouraging cities to take. So that's so exciting. And, you know, it's been quite a year for everyone on so many levels, but to be able to reopen with reuse and get back on track to protecting our environment is fantastic.
Yeah, and the important part is we need to educate. There's been a lot of misinformation about whether COVID could be spread on reusable items, and I would rather use reusable that's cleaned than depend on a disposable item. You don't know where it's been. So all the NGOs are working to educate the cities on, you know, the actual impacts of COVID, which it's not being spread on these items as was kind of feared in the beginning. Yeah. So we're trying to broaden the outreach just to say, here are the facts, and they're all supported with scientific evidence that, you know, reusables do not spread coronavirus for the most part.
And I love that, Craig. And in the beginning, like, fair enough, you know, so much was unknown, and we all, of course, needed to put, you know, public health and safety first. And now, as we know better and more, of course, over the past year and a half, I can't believe it's been that long. You know, now we know that we can do both protect public safety and also protect our environment. So thank you, Craig. I know not all of our local ordinances are quite where we want to be, and there's more work to be done, but it's really good to hear that many are moving in the right direction. And, you know, that's thanks in large part to people like you for your tremendous efforts over the year to move our cities in a more sustainable direction. And one of the most critical ways individuals can make an impact is by supporting, you know, the organizations on this panel, you know, Surfrider, Los Angeles Waterkeeper, there's many more in Los Angeles, using them as a resource and conduit of information to support stronger policies to fight plastic pollution. In turning to our next speaker, and thank you again, Craig, I want to again start with a quote from, you know, The Story of Plastic. The world needs to move to more localized refill systems. And that's where businesses like the Wasteless Shop come in. So it's my honor to introduce you to, you know, the owner and founder of the Wasteless Shop, Stephanie Cochran, to hear how businesses like hers are creating solutions for individuals. Hi, Stephanie. We're so thrilled to have you here with us. I have been a customer of the Wasteless Shop. I sing your praises, you know, far and wide, since you opened in 2019, and I was actually honored to even be part of your grand opening back then. I am thrilled to see the growth of the plastic-free movement, thanks to people like you, with more and more refill options becoming available. So I thought we could start off by you, letting all of us know. First of all, welcome, and let us know what role refill can play in reducing the demand for single-use plastics.
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. I feel really honored to be a part of this panel, and it's already been so interesting and fascinating. So thank you for that. And yeah, on reducing plastics and reducing the demand for single-use plastics, it does start at the consumer level. I know in Story of Plastic, they really let you know how much goes on behind the consumer eye that we don't know about. But even in the last couple of years, we've seen the power that consumer demand shows. When I started the refill store in 2019, there really weren't that many options available. And even in the few years since I've started the store, I've seen this boom. And that's because of the local support from the communities that these stores are starting in. So that's the first step, I would say, in reducing the single-use plastic demand is increasing the demand for refills by supporting local businesses in your community, whether it's your CSA program at your farmer's market for food, or shopping in bulk at your local grocery store, shopping in a local refill store if you have one around you, or looking for refillable options online. Like I said, they're growing faster and faster and faster, but there's still a greater need for access to refill stores. So one place that you can look to is Grove Collaborative online ships. They do have some plastic products still, but they've been doing a really good job with working towards refillables. So I would just do some research. I would do some research wherever you live to see if there are local refill centers that you can support. In LA, we've got some options popping up more and more every day. We've got a really good refill store in East LA, Sustain LA. There's BYO Long Beach, that's in Long Beach, the Wasteless Shop in Manhattan Beach, and some more like mobile stores popping up around LA as well. And oh, sorry, I lost my note really quick.
Yeah, I love the one. There's like there's food trucks. There's like a refillery truck, which I think is super cool too.
Yeah.
Well, tell us, if that's all right, may I ask you another question?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, you've told us a little bit about the refill movement and how it can play, a role in reducing the demand for single-use plastics. And it's so important, not just, for individuals to do that, but the fact that now there are incentives for, businesses like yours, to be born, that is now like a way of the world is just fantastic. As individuals, where do you think one starts on their refill journey? Like if you're new to the refill world, I just recently introduced a friend to the refill world and they didn't know, that there you can go get shampoo, conditioner, so much. So what are some easy swaps that we can make to reduce and preferably eliminate single-use plastics in our lives?
Yeah, one of the things I always tell customers when they come in the shop is just starting with what you have, with what you're running out of. You can't do it all at once. That's not sustainable to get rid of the things that you have. You need to use what you have first. And as you start getting low on the product, that's when you can start the research that I was talking about to see if there's a local option to refill that for you, or if you can get something online. I actually have a little selection of products here that I think are really good starters that are just around my house. So one is a Keep Cup. It's just a reusable coffee mug. So one of the biggest single-use plastic items in a lot of people's lives is coffee cups. A lot of local, yes, and lids. Mm-hmm. A lot of local coffee shops will support you bringing your own mug. And now that the pandemic is starting to lift a little bit, my local coffee shop in my area is allowing reusable mugs. So it's always a good conversation starter to ask your local coffee shop if they allow it. And then if they don't, you can kind of prod a little bit and, see if you bring your own cup, kind of start the movement there. Another one is reusable food storage containers. Ziploc bags, things like that are really, really proliferate around a lot of households. But if you can just replace some of those with like beeswax food wraps instead of using saran wrap, works great. And it's biodegradable. You can reuse it for years. And then these stasher bags, I love. They last years and years as well, especially
fantastic. Dishwasher safe, easy to wash, microwavable, like it goes on and on. They're like a wonder product.
Totally. We've got reusable paper towels. That's another huge one that causes a lot of waste. People using plastic sponges and things like that. You can reuse washable, reusable products, and then bulk products too. So whether you're getting them from a refill store, or ordering them in bulk online, or even at your local grocery store, you can get 1 gallon hand soap instead of a bunch of 16-gallon or 16-ounce things. So those are kind of the big ones that are really popular, but it gets all the way down to shampoo and conditioner bars. Even if you don't have a refill store next to you and you can't refill liquid shampoo, you can order solid versions as well. So solid dish soap, things like that are really, really cool, that are innovative things that are popping up.
I've shared my journey on starting a new home last year on a blog that I have. And a lot of my journey has been through the Wasteless Shop. You've really helped on that journey. The reusable towels in particular, like people cannot believe that you can get by. It's been a year and 3-4 months now, and we virtually not use paper towels in our house. And so those unpaper towels are just, they really, really work, and you just wash them and then they roll back up. I love that they look like the paper towels and can be used like that. A couple of my other favorites are you have some really great not reusable, but it comes in a reusable container, dental floss made of bamboo. So the container, you just put the new bamboo in there, and the bamboo can be composted, as well as bamboo, Q-tips, I guess. But I could go on and on. I love so many of the things that I've learned from your store. So thank you. It sounds like those are some of your favorites. I know you have some beauty products too. Is there one before we go that anything you'd like to highlight that we maybe wouldn't have thought of?
On the beauty note, one of my favorite products that I'm obsessed with is Activist Skincare. And it's actually a closed loop system. So what that means is I get the product in a glass jar, and when I'm done using that product, I can keep it, and the manufacturer will take it and sterilize it and refill it. So that way we're able to fully close the system. But her skincare products are amazing. I'm loving the gel cleanser. So there's products that are so much deeper. We've got refillable sunscreen or an insect repellent I have here. It just it goes on and on. So much further than dish soap and laundry detergent. There's so many really cool, innovative businesses.
And, this could be a whole other, hour-long panel, but you also, have a select grouping of vintage clothing and sustainable fashion, and the microfibers, the small microplastics that we're finding in the ocean. So much of that has to do with fashion. But again, that could take us in a whole other many-hour discussion, but food for thought. Well, thank you, Stephanie. One of the most effective ways that we can all make change is by voting with our dollars. So where you spend and shop matters a lot. And we are lucky to have so many numerous local options and more, national and international options to support our zero waste journey. So I really encourage you to support businesses like the Wasteless Shop. So thank you. So at this point, we would love to turn it over to questions from the audience. So please send any. I see one, and so I'll do a couple of questions, and then I'd love to turn it back over to the four of you after we're done with questions and your answers. Just like if you have one parting, word of wisdom that you'd like to share, I'll be asking you to do that. So here's a question for the panel. Policy can be intimidating, but how can one engage in and help plastic pollution legislation? That is an excellent question, because legislation is critical, and yet the individual can often be very intimidated. It seems like something somebody else should do. Organizations like Los Angeles Waterkeeper, Surfrider, Plastic Pollution Coalition. So how can the individual get involved in that? Miha, why don't I start with you, and then if anybody else wants to chime in, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, I think that even beach cleanups with LA Waterkeeper every weekend, is a really great start. For Surfrider, we do beach cleanups, and we asked volunteers to use a data card to write down everything that they pick up. And that actually is a gateway to activism, because we take that information and then we are able to visualize the litter, the plastic pollution that is out there. And we're able to make a case to our elected officials saying, hey, here are these hotspots of plastic pollution, or plastic pollution is everywhere. We need to address this. And so I think beach cleanups are a great start. You can go to our website and sign some action alerts. I think that's a really easy way to get to know the issue. And then finally, I would just say that, legislators, elected officials want to hear from the constituents. And with the pandemic, I think it's even easier to schedule a Zoom meeting with somebody. And I wouldn't be intimidated. Go through the LA Waterkeeper or your local Surfrider chapter, because you can do like a group meeting, and it won't be painless, and people want to hear from you.
And it's easier to participate in, like city council hearings. I just actually participated in our city's city council hearing Tuesday night virtually, and it just was so easy and convenient. So that's such a good point, Miho. Okay.
Yeah,
and
I would like to add a little something to that. It's really kind of important to stay connected with what's going on in your city. And, it's maybe not the most entertaining thing to be in a city council meeting. Sometimes they go on forever. And for me, there's multiple city councils on the same night. So I have up to 3 or 4 computers running with a different city council on it. But I would recommend just getting becoming familiar with your city council, read what's on the agendas, get involved, show up to a meeting either virtually or in person, and get to know your elected officials. They want to hear from you, and it's really good to reach out and just talk to them. They're wonderful people for the most part, and they really do want to hear your perspective. So get involved and get to know them. I have personal friends on all these elected officials, and they're great people. So I very much encourage that.
Yeah, I can attest. I completely concur that, our local officials were so, these people are so giving of their time. We're so lucky to have them, look out for their citizens. Deanna, did you want to add anything on this question?
I could add something to that question. Then I also see this other question about the biggest obstacle. So I could go into that too. But, I would say it is really important for our elected officials to hear from us. And it doesn't matter how old you are, even if you're a really young person, they want to hear from you. They want to know what you care about and what you're interested in. And if this is something that you care deeply about and are passionate about, the more of us that they hear from, the more that they're going to know that their constituents want this federal legislation or city legislation or state legislation to be passed.
Right.
So that's important. And then I would say in terms of obstacles, one of the biggest obstacles is the plastic and the petrochemical industry, because they have millions and millions of dollars to spend on marketing to, create messaging that confuses people.
And I'd like to add to that, yes, the misinformation that gets distributed is something need to really look to the source and get factual information that's scientifically based. And there's been so much misinformation that communicating the facts that are, based in truth is really important, because sometimes the legislators don't have time to be up on everything. And if you can help share some facts with them, it's extremely helpful.
Yep. And they want to know, what we care about. And as Craig and I have seen firsthand, students you do not have to be an adult to bring these, to have a voice. In fact, I would argue that if you are a student or a young, mind, your voice actually is more impactful and is more listened to. And so don't be intimidated by, this adult world. I think our elected officials very much want to hear from you. You are our future. So I have one last question. I'm going to throw it to you, Stephanie. We've heard a lot about the circular economy, but what does that mean? And are we actually making strides to get there? It seems like that's a perfectly appropriate, perfect question for you. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Our economies before single-use plastics were invented were pretty circular, and we just kind of need to get back to that. So what that means is, instead of buying a product, using it, and then throwing it away or recycling it, which obviously in the story of plastic, we kind of learn a lot more what actually happens there. You buy a product, use it, and then reuse it, refill it, return it to the manufacturer to be reused. So that's solutions that smaller businesses are focusing on, that obviously through legislation, we need to get the bigger businesses to really prioritize. So kind of what everybody has been focusing on is, in this discussion so far, is really, really localizing it and putting the power for the people to say, we want these products, this is important to us. And you can do that through consumer demand, also through voting. So yeah, it's just taking something, reusing it fully, and making sure that it's either biodegrading back into the earth or going back to the manufacturer to be adequately reused or recycled.
Which I think is more likely to happen if it's glass or aluminum. Those can be recycled into quality, products much, much more so than plastic. Well, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, everyone. I'm going to end by sharing one more of my favorite quotes from the story of plastic. And then I'd like to turn it over to each of you to just give, one parting thought. I loved this quote from an individual, fighting to do something about the plastic pollution crisis. He said, "Look at our globe. It's a water world. what we do here will affect every life form on this earth. So, he wanted to, and I want to, I love this sentiment, to encourage you to bring in a spirit of unity across boundaries, because these toxins from plastics do not understand political boundaries. So with that, I'm going to go in order of, our speakers. So Deanna, what's one last, word of wisdom you'd like to share?
Well, I agree 100% with that quote, and probably know the person that said it, although I don't know if it was Vaughn or who said it from the film, but we do live on a water planet and there is no away. So I think that we need to understand that nature doesn't create any waste, and we should be looking at all of the materials that we use every day in our life, if we're able to, as 100% valuable materials. And so when you begin to just shift your perspective a little bit in that direction, it helps you to do things like begin to make the shift to buying things, food, vegetables and fruit unpackaged, looking for bulk ways or refill ways to purchase products that you use regularly, and to reduce your exposure to plastics, plastic packaging, and toxic chemicals from plastic, not toxins, toxic chemicals. I would say, in parting to everyone, the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act is a really exciting piece of federal legislation. Learn more about it. All of the groups on this panel have information available to you on Plastic Pollution Coalition. We have several blog posts that help explain it. We have links that you can go to, and the Action Network where you can go and sign up to support it, and reach out to your local representatives to help support it. So I encourage everyone to reach out in that way and learn more about it. And just to really think reusable and not single use or disposable, and just incorporate that into your daily being. It's a huge challenge. I certainly am not perfect, but myself and my family, we try. And I think that that's, you begin, it's Plastic Free July. Let's celebrate it. You can buy things. I was just at the farmer's market. Corn on the cob is happening right now. It's so good. Tomatoes, plums, peaches, apricots. It's like,
no packaging required.
Packaging.
I love it.
That's it.
Thank you, Deanna. Miho, what would you love to leave us with?
Yeah, I love the sentiment about how we're all interconnected, even with the plastic pollution crisis, thinking about plastic pollution as a climate change issue, an environmental justice issue, how we are all connected to the plastic that we use. Who is it impacting? And it's, it might not be in my community, but I'm sure it's within 100 miles, and the impacts, the detrimental health impacts that people are facing. And it's something that you might not think about, but, it's pretty easy to make a switch from single-use plastics. And I think also the idea is that you don't have to spend a lot of money to go zero waste or not use plastic. This is an old spaghetti jar that I just washed, and I've been using it as a cup. And so I think, the zero waste movement, it sometimes may seem like it has to be expensive, but I don't think it is. You can use what you have. And I think that every little difference, every little change you make can make a really impactful difference. So thank you for having me. It's been fun here.
Thank you. And truly every step makes a difference, and you can take that spaghetti jar and bring it on over to shops like the Wasteless Shop and refill it. Craig, I know we're just at time. So if you and Stephanie in a minute can give us your parting words, that'd be great.
Yeah, very quickly. I think the easiest way to get involved is just to do it yourself, and start by doing reusables where it's comfortable. Go to a store like Stephanie's and find out how you can eliminate some of these single-use things, and don't get stressed out about it. Just, it's going in the right direction. It's really making a difference all the way across the boards, and set an example for your friends and neighbors. And I think that's the best example. And I live that every day.
I love that. Lead by example. That's fantastic, Craig. Thank you. And by the way, you do that. Stephanie, you get the last word.
Yay. Well, I'm going to piggyback on Craig, because that's pretty much what I was going to say is, as consumers, it can feel overwhelming looking around at all of the plastic options in the store, but there is so much power in how we vote with our dollars. So if you can just like remember the power that you have and not feel overwhelmed and just take it step by step, those little actions really, really do make big change. And we are seeing that around us. So, you know, trying to stay positive and feel empowered to keep working for better is going to, you know, residually affect the whole world.
I love it. Well, thank you all so, so much. Again, please visit all of the organizations and businesses, you know, that you heard from today. All of us also link to other organizations and businesses that we are, you know, proud to be standing arm in arm with, because it's, you know, it really is going to take a village. As we talked about earlier, LA Waterkeeper and Surfrider also have cleanups throughout Plastic Free July and really throughout the year. And these cleanups serve as a really wonderful bonding way to come together and feel like you're, first of all, doing something and taking action. And also you can really visibly see how big the problem is, which will hopefully encourage all of us to get more involved. So please go to all of our websites, which we have linked. And just thank you so much, all of you, for taking the time to share your wisdom. And thank you, all of you, for taking the time to be here on this Thursday night and listen, you know, to these plastic solution ideas.